Hello everyone, assalamu alaikum. So this would be a Getx beginners tutorial and it's by DBestech. DBestech has been coding for the last 12 years and Flutter itself I've been coding for the last 5 years. So not only that, I've been also using Getx for 5 years. Well, that means you're going to learn some solid stuff, some real stuff about Flutter Getx and programming concept. So let me walk you through quickly what we are going to build in this course and what we are going to learn. Definitely you're going to start with a beautiful startup UI like this. And you will get the startup file from the link below. And then as soon as you click over here, we're going to start routing, and that routing would be actually Getx Routing, and it's going to load data. And as it loads data, actually it also does it with Getx. So we're going to read some JSON files from our local storage, read the data, and update the UI. Now we're going to do that using Getx. So all this information is loaded from JSON, and we have updated this UI using Getx, which is part of state management. And not only that, actually, if you click any of these items, for example, you'll get more detail about this person. Whoever you click, you'll get that person and that person over here at the beginning. And this has also been done with Getx, so state management. And not only that, as you see that, you can also have your favorites over here. You can toggle between these two values, and as you do that, actually this data is saved in the server, which in this case our backend service, we are using Firebase. So this is persisted. For example, now you come back over here, the first guy, and you save the data, so it went to the backend directly. You browse through your app and that data is still saved. So that's the data that's been saved. And this has also been done with Getx and our Firebase together. So if you're a Getx beginner, you'll learn a lot in this tutorial. So as I have described early, so let's get down to the business. This Getx tutorial, let's see what we're going to cover. So we'll cover Getx installation, the latest version, and then we'll learn about GetMaterial app. There are many properties to cover. Definitely we'll be covering Getx routing, the easiest routing out there. And then we'll also see how to pass parameters using Getx and deal with arguments. And then we'll see data injection with Getx, which makes data binding very easy. And definitely we can also see Getx state management. And not only that, we'll also learn about Getx controller's lifecycle, and how to work with OBS type objects. Not only that, we'll also see OBX, GetBuilder, and GetView and the difference between them, and as well as data binding. And then we'll also see how to store our data in Firestore and backend services. So for backend service, we are going to use Firebase, but Firebase is blocked in many countries. What to do in that case? Well, some of you might say, let's go ahead and use VPN, but here I'm going to introduce something better than VPN. That's called FloppyData. So if you're dealing with blocked websites like Firebase or Google services, and you want to manage multiple accounts, or you are facing IP ban issues, then FloppyData is the way to go. FloppyData is a powerful proxy service designed to make online activities secure, seamless, and accessible from anywhere in the world. FloppyData provides millions of global IPs, so you can choose any IP address. It also provides flexible proxy options, cost-effective, top-tier security, and easy team management. So your team can also use it. And it is so affordable that FloppyData has proxy coverage in over 190 plus countries around the world. And they also have great customer service. So what you are waiting for? Let's get started with FloppyData and have you secure, safe internet browsing from today. Hello everyone, assalamu alaikum. So let's get started. To get started with this Getx tutorial, first we need to download our resources. And to download them, first come over here to this link over here. And you can find this link in the description below. It should be the very first link. Go ahead and put it over here, and then it will load. And then the very first thing after that you do over here is this one. Go ahead and click on this, okay? Now we go ahead and click on this. You'll see that, okay, so there is a repository. And well, it's pretty old because there was this first version of this tutorial. Now I'm recording the second version 4 years later, but it's being updated all the time. But anyway, so here I'm going to click on this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and now I'll create a local version of this. So what I'm going to do, open this terminal, and then I'm going to save this project somewhere. Now In my case, I'm using Mac. You can use Windows. It doesn't matter. Anywhere, any terminal is okay. So I'm going to do cd documents and Udemy courses like this. Okay. All right. And then here I'm going to go ahead and create a directory. I'll call it Getx taught like that. Okay. And I'm going to do cd Getx taught. Okay. Now you could create all of these things manually, but I love to do that using terminal. Now here I'm going to do git clone, and then I'm going to go ahead and clone it over here. So it's going to download all of these things. Now, for some of you, if you don't know how to use git clone, you can just simply go ahead and download it like this one, download zip, and you're good to go as well. Okay? It's the same thing pretty much, but I find the terminal is quite useful. So here I'll see that I have this Flutter Getx app folder, and now inside I can go inside this, so I could do Flutter Getx app like that. Okay, so there are a lot of files, and here we do see our lib folder. Okay, all right. So regardless how you get this folder, you'll see all of this thing. You can get it from git clone. You can also directly download it from here. Now, either way, I'm going to go ahead and open this. So how to open this? I'm going to do this one, and then here I do see that there is a Getx app folder, this one. So this is the one that we have seen early. So now I'm going to go ahead and open it in our Android Studio. So this is our Android Studio, and let me go ahead and close the old one. We don't need that. Okay. Now this is the one that we have opened it, and let's see where is the location. In my case, I would do pw. So here Getx start, and there's the folder. So there's the correct one. So make sure you go to your correct folder. I'm going to go ahead and do clear over here, and we do see that there's some issues. Now these issues are dependencies issues. Okay. Now the dependencies means like, say for example, this thing's over here, StatefulWidget, but it has to connect with the API. That where is this coming from? What is this key? It has no idea. So for this reason over here, we can do Flutter get. All right. So it's going to download all of these dependencies, which means that now it has a meaning. What is this? Okay. And how they work, things like that. Okay, but that's not part of our tutorial, so we're going to skip that. The very first thing here, I'm going to go ahead and check that this version. So we are making sure we are using the latest Flutter version over here. And then we're also using the latest Getx version. Okay. All right. So do remember, Getx, when you get it, it doesn't really say Getx, it just get. All right. So that's the first part, that here we learned how to get the resources and open it in your favorite editor. All right. So in next part, we'll be talking a little bit about our lib folder. Now, over here, we're going to open up our lib folder, and inside this here, we'll see a few files. Of course, the most important one is main.dart and the other files. Now, the other files, they pretty much all contain the basic UI, because this is not a UI course. This is a Getx course. Here we'll cover everything about Getx. So I'm not going to explain these things. So if you do have any questions, you can ask in the comment section and I will try to answer that. Now here, in this case, I have put everything in one folder, but as we work along, we'll have our proper directory or proper MVC structure, but which will come later, okay? We are not going to do it right away. So this is the beginner structure. Everything is in lib folder. So we'll develop it. And at the same time, here you'll see some JSON files. Make sure that you have them. And then we're going to use them in our project. And then IMG folder, here there are some pictures that we'll go ahead and use them. Most probably not all of them. So these are the most important one, okay? Now, since we understand the project structure, basic structure, and the files that we need, after that, we're going to go ahead and run it on our iPhone simulator. You can also do it on Android simulator. It doesn't really matter. So whatever it is, make sure you go ahead and select that. And then I'm going to run it. So hopefully it'll run on this iPhone 16. where the iOS version is 18. So let's see whether it runs or not. Now it says that Xcode build is done, so hopefully it would show up. Now I'm going to go ahead and check that. Now here we do see that, okay, right over here, we have this app ready, but it's blank and white. Okay, now there is a reason why it is like that. The reason is because if you come to your main.dart over here, you'll see that it has a container as your home page or home screen, and it's pretty much white. So that means it's working, and we can verify that. We can use other colors, for example, say blue, okay, or blue gray, and hot reload, so it works. So now we learn that whatever the file was given along with this GitHub link, it works. Okay, so since this work, in our next section we'll step by step build the app with different parts. We'll connect them, and slowly we'll also move to Getx. Okay, so here we are back over here. Now here we do have this container, so that's why we do see this. And what if I want to try a different page, for example, say my home page, right? So we're gonna go ahead and try this one. So this is the basic UI given here, and instead of this container we could do my home page. Okay, how do I get this name? The name is actually over here, my home page. Okay, that's how I get that. Well, let's go ahead and restart. And of course we see a beautiful UI over here. As you can see, that it's pretty beautiful. Okay, all right, so that's the first part. Now if we click on this, it takes us to this page, and over here we have this stack widget, and within it we have few positioned widget. Now this stack widget helps us to put things onto one another. Like for example, this is the background, and then we have this text and the button. Most probably the button, because of this button we used this stack widget. As you can see over here, we also have this favorite, and then this context, and then this text itself, and then we also have this elevated button. Okay, all right, so all these things is possible because of stack widget together. Once again, this is not a UI class, so I'm not going to cover on this. Now there are other things that we could do right away instead of doing my home page, and after that we can go to a new page and verify everything. So here we can go to content page, this one, which is this page over here, and you'll see that it's a pretty long page, and we'll also work on that in future. So over here, as you see that the name of the class is content page, and that's what we've invoked over there. And then the last one we want to verify is this one, detail page. So let's go ahead and put it here. Instead of content, you could do detail page, and then here we'll see things like that. Okay, so this is the basic UI that's already been given, and now we'll work on it step by step. All right, so in next tutorial we can actually introduce a little bit about Getx, and we'll continue from there. Now to continue with Getx, the first thing you need to do in general, if you use Getx, you may also use routing. Routing means navigation. For example, when you show your home screen, how to show it, and then from there where to go and do things like that. Okay, now the very first thing over here we're going to do is my home page. Well, and what do I mean by that? So first let me go ahead and put it as my home page again. All right, and let's refresh, and this is what we see. After that, over here, because we want to use Getx for routing, so over here instead of material app we need to use get material app, get. Okay, so as simple as that one. And if you do that, make sure that at the top you have this one imported, package get / get.dart. So it's going to get all the APIs for you, and then we are good to go. Now we can run the app one more time and we will see no changes at all, apart from the changes where it says that Getx material get material controller has been created. Now this is a controller. If you don't know what is a controller, controller deals with like data dealing, like how data works. But the definition of controller could define place to places. In this case, Getx holds all the business logic for us. And particularly in this case, getMaterial holds all the business logic for us. And now this might be a little bit deep for us at the beginning. We'll take a look at that later. All right. So if your getMaterial app is working, you will definitely say this thing where it says that getMaterial controller has been created and initialized. So if we create our own controller, if we create our own Getx controller, which we will do in future, we'll see that a controller, Getx controller, is always created and then initialized. All right, that's the first part. Okay, now since we have this getMaterial app, now we can use Getx for routing. Now, to do that, one of the things here we want to do is call something called initial route. I mean, what's the first route? Okay, so in general, the very first route you want to define like this using this slash. Okay, all right. So whatever this slash refer to, because there would be another referring or reference to this slash. So whatever it refers to, we will see that in the screen. Okay. Now to be able to work with this, here we have something called get pages. And now this get pages actually is coming from Getx. Okay. So as you can see, get page, these things, they're all coming from Getx. Okay. Now this get pages takes a list. As you can see it from here, list, where it takes get page. Okay, so here we have to have a lot of get page. That's what we are doing. Okay, that's it. And then inside this, if you, let's see whether we can learn more from here. There is no explanation, but few things here we see. First is it requires a string, as you can see that. So this has to be a string. And then we also see that it also has a widget. We also have to return a widget from here. Okay, and it has to be like a name, function name. Okay, as it says over here, widget, function name, and these two are required. If you don't do this, two of this, you will get error. Okay, so first we're gonna do this string. Now in general, whatever you put inside double quotation, that's a string, so the first error is gone. And what about this one? Now once again, if you see over here, it says that it has to be widget. So if you have a little bit idea how Flutter works, so you have to have a widget over here. It could be a stateful class or stateless class, something that has a build method. Actually, that's a widget. Okay, and we have to write it like this. It has to have this brackets. Okay. Now in our case earlier we have seen some widgets, like this is a widget in one sense because it has a build method, as you see, right? Or the other one, my homepage. This is also a widget because it has a build method. Whatever has a build method, that makes it a widget in Flutter. Anyway, so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do my homepage. Okay, and then, well, you have to have it like this, otherwise we'll get an error. Okay, so it has to return a widget. So whenever you do like this, it's like you're returning a widget. Hopefully you know that. And then here you're saying that, okay, very first screen that pops up, it has to be my home page. Once again, this means very first page, and we say this has to be my homepage widget or a class. So let's go ahead and restore it, and nothing will change. Definitely we see nothing has changed, everything as before. Okay, now for this one here, we could also change this to say content page, and it would work the same. Okay, So all it does over here in this case, Flutter and Getx, they say, okay, whatever this points to. So this points to this one right now. So that's why we see like this content page. Okay, so let's go ahead and restart. Okay, now there's one problem because my home has to be raised. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Okay, now it's going to work. Okay, so if you have a home page and slash at the same time, whatever you put in the home page, that's going to go ahead and take effect. Okay, you have to remember that one. So go ahead and remove this thing and you're good to go. All right, now in this case, we can also do detail page. Detail page. All right. Now let's go ahead and restart. There we go. So that's the very basic routing in our case with Flutter. This is a very basic routing. So to sum up over here, if you want to have Getx for routing, you have to have getMaterial app. Then you have to define your initial route. And then you also have to get this get pages, this list. And inside this, you have to show your pages, all the pages, the one that you want to use in our app. Now, of course, there's a better way to define them, which we'll see later down the road, not yet. Anyway, so in next tutorial, we'll see more about Getx routing. All right, so this is where we left off last time. So we're going to continue. Before that, let me close some of this. And for now, okay, let's continue. So this is what we did last time, but I'm going to fall back to my homepage. So I'm going to go ahead and change this. Make sure that you do hot reload. Hot reload doesn't work. If you change the routing, then you have to restart it. Now here we are. Now here we do see that on this UI, on this home page, there should be a button. Okay, as you see, you click on this, it reacts. Now let's go ahead and check on this. Now this guy should be somewhere here, down here, where it says that get started. Okay, now it doesn't go anywhere right now because we just have a container is empty container, doesn't do anything. Now the very first thing we want to do over here, I want to compare and give you the idea between native way of doing routing and then Getx way of doing routing. So the very first thing we'll do over here is we'll make sure that as we click on this, it works. For example, here we'll say on pressed. All right, okay, so let's go ahead and save it. Click on this and we'll say on pressed. Okay, now over here inside this, we want to do the basic way, the way that we do routing in Flutter without any kind of package. It's called navigator.push. You could do push named. There are a few others like push and pop and push named, push and remove until, but those we don't need now. So you're gonna simply go ahead and do this. All right, and then make sure you have this semicolon. So we have to pass context if we want to do navigation, or if you want to click and go to a page, you have to call navigator.push or other method, and definitely have to pass context. And then you also have to do this one, something called material page route. You have to have this one. So let's go ahead and do this. Okay, and I'm going to format the code so that it looks good, and within it here you will have your page. In my case, if we click on this, we want to go to this content page. So here we'll say content page. Okay, all right, now let's go ahead and restart from the scratch. Now you click on this, it takes us to a page, but of course we don't have any back button over here, so we don't have a way to go back for now. But if you do click on this, you'll see that it takes us to this UI or the screen. Now this is pretty much the basic native way in Flutter to do the navigation. And as you can see that it has navigator object, then you have to call the push method, you have to pass the context, and you also have to call this widget or class, which actually does the navigation for you, create a page, and then it shows you over here. Now this is a little bit more hassle. Okay, this is a little bit more hassle if you just want to go to a new screen. Imagine if you want to pass a lot of parameters to that screen, or if you also want to pass a widget or different stuff or object. So this gets more complicated than this. So this is where the Getx shines, is it gives you very simple way to go to a new page. For example, here you can just simply do get.to, and then here within it you can call content page. Okay, all right. So for now, I'm going to actually, I think we need to, this one over here, we need to comment this out. Okay, all right, and make sure we restart it. Now here you'll see that you can navigate easily, and of course you see that here it says that content page. All right, this becomes much easy. One more time, let's go ahead and see that. Okay, right. So if you use Getx way to do the navigation, just simple line of code and it's easy to remember. On the other hand, this one not easy to remember. Trust me, I've been programming in Flutter for last almost 6 years or 7 years, and then this thing is easy to forget. Okay, but it's not bad, but it just a lot of code. Okay, so you want to simplify stuff, that's why it's better. But even in Getx there is a better way to do that, because earlier we are looking at this. Okay, now here we can define a route and do it a better way. So here we can still say get name, and here we can say content. Okay, and then here we could do say content page. So here you are defining your route. You are saying that wherever I see this, then go to this screen or widget. Okay, all right. Now in this case we are not going to use this anymore. There is a different approach to do that. That is called get.toNamed. Okay, in this case what you do here, it says that string page. So you have to pass a string. Okay, what is the string in this case? In this case the string is content. So this is a better way of doing that. In the, I mean, if you route mentioning name, definitely that's much better because your name is there, the route. If you want to do more advanced operation, the naming definitely helps you. So once again we are going to go ahead and restart our app. And then here we click on this, we see that we are able to route to a different page, which is our content page, as you see over here. So now come to this content page and find somewhere like 135 where it says container, and you have this list over here, page view builder. Okay, this is also like a list but more advanced list. Okay, and here inside this we have this child, and this child actually represents this things over here. Okay, now within this, as you know, gesture detector take on pressed event or on tap, and within it here we want to go to a different page. Now how to do that? So first we'll try get.to, and then here we'll say, for example, here you'd say detail. Okay, detail page. All right. Okay, now let's go ahead and restart our app, and then here we are, and click on this, so it takes us to this detail page over here, as you see that. Okay, now of course we cannot go back, that's a problem, but anyway we'll solve those things later. Click on this and click on this, it takes you this guy to this thing. Okay, all right. Now As I said earlier, this is not best way to do even in Getx, the routing. So in this case, we can also change it over here. So here we'll say get page, and then here we'll say detail page, and then we're gonna simply do detail page. All right, and then let's come over here. So we're gonna comment this out, and here we'll say get the to named, and then here detail page, and you're good to go. Let's click on this, and it works. So as you see, the route name is mentioned. Okay, all right, but if you don't do it like this, say for example you're gonna do it the other way, the first way. Now let's go ahead and check on this, click on this. So here the name is capital name, okay, like whatever the name you put here. But if you do like this, whatever the name you put here, you'll see, so the string name itself. Let's go ahead and restart one more time. Let's go ahead and click on this. So in your case, the string is detail page. Wherever you click, you'll see this. So you'll not actually see the page name otherwise. Okay, so if you have get pages, list of pages, then you have to have list of routes, and for each of routes you have to have each of this screens. And then wherever you want to use a screen in your app, you have to refer them using this name. And most of the time we use get.toNamed. Okay, like that. So with this we learned the difference between, you know, how the native navigation work, and also how the basic routing works in Getx. And we also learned what is the better way using a string name to do the routing, because best routing method actually involves the string name. It's easy to maintain. All right, so this gives us a better idea about Getx and routing. Okay, so now since we have the basic idea how the routing works in Getx, so we will continue on this. Now one problem we'll fix before that is the back button over here. Now the back button is supposed to be on this content page over here. So we're gonna go ahead and find this line around 3023 where it says scaffold, this one. And inside this here, we're gonna simply go ahead and do a bar, and then here we'll say a bar. With this, we'll be able to see our a bar. If you save it, you'll see one directly, but we don't want this color, so we can define the background color. So here we'll say background color like this, and you're good to go, as you see. Now here it does have a padding at the top, so for now we're gonna just skip this. Okay, all right, so now it works, and if you see, you can go to other pages as well. Okay, now this back button doesn't work. The reason is over here. So we have this icon button, and here on pressed event is null, so that's why it doesn't work. So here we can just simply do get.back, so it'll go back to the earlier page. Okay, all right. As you see, it already works. So let's restart one more time. This one, click on this, and go there and there. Okay, cool. So with this, we are also done about the back button. Now in the next section, in this coming section, we're going to go ahead and restructure our folder, as you can see over here. So it's a little bit messed up. Now in general, we are going to follow MVC structure. So we're going to go ahead and create a new directory. We're going to call it views. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop inside this. and it will ask me whether I want to do refactor or not. I'll say yes, and then here once again, so it'll correct the names and importing path, things like that. So that's why we need that. Now it looks much better. All the views would be inside this. Okay, all right. So in future we may need more restructure inside this, which we'll see later. Now since we are working with Getx Routing, we're gonna go ahead and create another folder which is called routes. So here actually we're gonna define our routes files and things like that. Okay, earlier we are saying that here, this one actually we can separate them. We don't have to have all of them here. So there's always a better way, better than this. So we're gonna follow that approach. So that's why we have this routes folder. And inside this here, we are going to go ahead and create a file. We can say route names.dart. Okay, right. And after that here, we're gonna go ahead and create a class. We can call it route names, and this would be a class like this. And as you see that here, we have this get pages. Now the get pages, they have list. So we want to create a list inside this get pages. The question is how we go ahead and do that. Now to do that, actually the class that we have created just now, inside that we can simply create a static variable. So now let's go to the class. So this is our class, and inside this we're gonna first create a list, because this is a list, right? And the list type is get page, so that's what we'll do. So here we'll say list, and what's the list type? For example, if you use a string, then you do string, right? But in our case, we are doing an object. The object itself is called getPage. All right, so this one. And then here we can give it name, because it's a variable name. In this case, it's a list of routes names. Okay, all right, just like this. And we can make it static, which means that it belongs to this class, not to the instances. So this is more about optimization of your code, nothing to do with Getx. So if you create a class, and some of the variables could be static, some of the variables could be const, some variables could be static const. Okay, now this is a lot of optimization and a lot of times more deep. We're not going to worry about that. So one thing you could do, you can go ahead and simply take this copy, or even you cut them from here and then just simply put them. Now with this, we separated them. Now we need to go ahead and import that. So let's go ahead and import that, and then here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and import the path, as you see. Okay, so all of them are here. Now since this is a class and the variable is a static, so now we can directly refer to this class in the variable. So our class name is route names, this one, and then the variable is routes. Okay, all right, now let's go ahead and restart, and you will see it's beautiful. So here we made it more simpler and separated them, and that's the beauty. So here, let's come over here. We can click on them, we can navigate, we can go back. Everything is same as before. Okay, nothing changes, but our code got better and more readable and clean. Okay, so this is a cleaner approach. Now since we are saying that it's a cleaner approach, so here we'll also do a little bit change, which I like to do. A lot of developers, they also do. We also want to separate them. So here we could say static, const, string, and initial. So that means our initial route, just like this. Okay, so that's our initial route. And then here I can always copy this part. So here I'll have this, And then I can say or we can simply say home page, and then home page, just like this. And then we can also do this. Okay, we can copy one more time, and then here we can say detail page. Well, in our case, home page and initial, they're same, but you can still define it differently. Page, just like this. So that's our detail page string. So here the route names, the string itself, we are putting them in a variable. With this, it becomes easy to maintain. And then here we can say content page. Content page, just like this. Okay, all right. Now we can just simply go ahead and replace them. So here we can say initial. Okay, and then here we'll say content page, and then here we'll say detail page. Okay, just like this. Okay, now let's see whether they work or not. Okay, so as you see that right now it doesn't work anymore, because we have changed this thing into a variable. But earlier, well, apart from this one, earlier we have this, say, my home page, like this guy. So here we had this content, a string, but this string right now we cannot find anywhere here. So that's why it causes this issue. So here, over here, we can even do a better approach, and the final better approach, which is making them as a variable name. So here we could do string. We can say get initial, and then we'll just simply return this variable. Okay, all right. And then here we can also do string get detail page. So we are creating a method. The method itself returns the detail page, and it may be a little bit confusing, but I'm going to make it more clear. So let me be done with this. Get content page, here content page. All right, now from here, instead of doing this, we can just simply say like this: route names get detail page, route names get content page, like that. But we also want to make them static const, because it means that you are part of a class, not instance. So here we'll have route names, and then here we'll have, you see, get detail page. Okay, all right. So get detail page here, actually eventually this becomes a string. How it becomes a string? As you see, get detail page refers to this variable, and this variable eventually mean or refers to this string over here. So next time, all you need to do, if you want to make any changes, just make changes inside this. You don't have to make changes anywhere else. You don't have to change the name over here. You don't have to touch them. All you need to do, you need to change the variable, the string names over here for the variable. Okay, once again, the idea is, once you write it like this, how it works: first, whenever you call, it's going to get this method, because remember, now get detail page is a method. If you click on this, it will come over here, and it refers to a variable, and this variable stores this string. So eventually, what you are doing over here, actually you are calling the string itself. There's a string here, but this is a better way, because remember, if you use this string name over here, and then you also use the string name in other places, and for some reason you need to change the string name, then you have to change the string name in many different places. But with this approach, you just change it here only once in one place. So that's why this is a better approach. Okay, so that's understanding about how the whole things work over here and how they're connected. Anyway, so right now inside this home page, actually we don't want to go to get detail page. We want to go to get content page. I mean, this is the actual route. Okay, so let's come over here, restore it, and click on this. This is where we have, and we want to click on this and go to the detail page, but right now we cannot because our routing has a problem. So now let's go to our get content, which is this one. And then over here, we know that there is a routing system that we have worked before. So we are going to find that one. And that was over here. So we are going to make it a one more upgrade. So here, instead of doing like this, we do route names dot get detail. Okay, right. So now let's see on this, click on this, beautiful. So with this, actually, we have a production ready routing system. This is pretty much the production ready routing system. So the idea is you'll separate all of your routes name, the strings and the other objects in a separate file. And wherever you want to use them, you can just simply call it from there. And at the same time, we do see that we have 3 different versions even for Getx routing. So this is the first version, and then we have used the other version, and this is the most advanced version we can use so far. So with this, we have more understanding about Getx and routing. Okay, so we'll continue and learn more about Getx, and this time we'll go back to and go to learn Getx controller or controller, how to create controller. Now, the reason that we want to create controller, you'll see that here we have this JSON file, and in this we have this detail JSON, img JSON, and recent JSON. So, for example, this is the very first one that we want to go ahead and use, which means that when I click on this icon, actually here I want to see some data that's being loaded. Okay, because right now it's all dry, empty. So we need to load this. So now this is a JSON file. So to load this and process the data, we can use Getx controller. Okay. Now, well, this is we're going to load this locally, but if your app is dynamic, which means that if your app has resources from outside world, external API, you'll still get JSON, and you'll still process the data in a controller. In our case, that's a Getx controller. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. Now, the first thing we need to do, we need to go ahead and create a model, because as I was saying that we are going to follow, MVC structure. So here I'm going to create a directory, and I'm gonna call it models. Okay, all right. And here I'm gonna call it detail data model, detail data model dot JSON. Sorry, Dart. We need this thing. This concept has nothing to do with Getx creating a model. If you deal with data, process data, you want to create an object from this data, then you should create a model. Now here, this is our model. This is our JSON data. From JSON data, we'll create a model. Now JSON has a key and a value. So these are called keys, these are called value. So we have 4 JSON objects, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they all share the same keys. Of course, the values are different, so that's why we can go ahead and create a model. Now, we can do it manually, but these days we can also use the help of ChatGPT. So here is my ChatGPT, and I'm going to put this, and I'll say create a data model, name detail data model, using Dart. Okay, we could do it manually, but with this it becomes much easier. Okay, so as you see that it already gave you all this information. Okay, all right, and of course this is correct. In general, ChatGPT doesn't make mistakes of creating a model, so it is a correct one. So I'm gonna go ahead. All right, and then over here I'm just going to go ahead and put it here. So here I have the fields, and here we have this constructor, and then we also have this from JSON method, and this is the method that we're gonna go ahead and call once our data is loaded, because you're gonna pass the JSON data and create an object. Okay, and then this one we don't need it for now, but in general you should always have a to.json, because this one is used when you want to send data to your server. You want to convert them to JSON. Okay, so that's what you want to do. Now that's the part that we dealt with, a data model. Now once again, since this is not a class about how to creating a model, I'm not going to go into much more detail. In next section, we're going to go ahead and create a controller. Okay, so we'll go ahead and create a controller. We don't need this. We don't need this either for now. And I don't think we need this. Okay, let's close all of them except my main.dart. Okay, all right. So next step is creating another folder, since we are doing MVC. So here we're going to call it controllers. So now we have view, models and controller. Okay, right. And instead this, we're gonna go ahead and create a model, a controller class, and we'll call it data controller, simply like that. Okay, data controller .dart. Okay, right. So after that, here we're gonna say class. So you're gonna go ahead and create a class, and then we're gonna call it data controller extends Getx controller. Well, we need Getx controller, not builder. Okay, right. And it looks like the spelling has a typo. This one. All right. So this is one that we did. Okay, now since our so if you want to create a controller using Getx, all you need to do, you create a class and then you extend it with Getx. Okay, Getx controller. But there's also another one called Getx service. In general, you don't need to do that, because with Getx service the data is persistent all the time. We don't need to keep the data alive. Our data could be destroyed sometimes, so it's okay. So this is where we just use Getx controller. All right, so it's just like a class. So a class can hold data or values. So here I'm going to go ahead and create a variable, and I'm going to call it var data. And here you'll see that we have detail data model, this one. Okay, now we can create an object and give it default values, in a sense that I mean, at the beginning you could give it some empty values. For image, actually we should give it more like a default image. Okay, all right, and that's it. Now since we are going to load this, we're going to use this data model to load our JSON file. So as I'm saying loading, I need to declare a variable. Okay, so here we can say, for example, RxBool. Okay, and here we can say is loading, and then here we'll say, for example, true.obs, data is loading. Okay, so now this is interesting, and this has to do more with Getx, because this data this variable is value, we want to change this value different times, and then we also want the UI to be reactive, which means the UI should update as well. So that's why here we have tagged with OBS. Okay, in general you might declare a variable bool, say loading whatever, and then you can define a variable value like true. Now this is not reactive, so if you change the value of this variable to something else, the UI will not automatically update. But since we are using Getx, now our variable, we can make them reactive, which means that if this variable, the value changes, then the UI will know it automatically. But to have the property that a variable changes and the UI knows, you have to give value, and then you also have to have this OBS at the same time, otherwise it's not going to work. Okay, all right, then here we could do bool get is loading, and here we'll say is loading dot value. So this variable is loading a reactive object actually. So it has, for example, you can think of it as two parts. One is the value and other is the reactive part. But for now, maybe we just want to show the value, so that's why we get the value. Okay, so this is what we have done. All right, now so this part has to totally do with Getx. Any kind of variable that you want to make it reactive, which means that you want the UI to respond based on the value change, you should use OBS right next to it. And just to get the variable's value, you should have something like this, variable.value. Okay, right. Now then there is also something called void init method, void on init. Now you know that if you have a StatefulWidget, you'll have on init state, but if you use Getx, then it becomes on init within your controller. Okay, and then here we have to have super. I do believe we also have to have this override tag. Okay, all right, this one. So within this actually we are going to go ahead and load our this JSON file. Okay, now interestingly enough, if you do come over here within these views, like for example this one, and I do believe from here we go to our content page. Okay, so which is this one. Okay, right. Now, since we are going to use Getx controller, we don't need this stateful widget. Actually, we just need a stateless widget. Because Getx controller, the controller itself will help you to maintain the update of the UI. Okay, so in general, we don't need this. So we can simplify it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this. Okay, and then remove this part, and then here I'm going to create stateless, and here I'm going to say content page. Now the one that I have cut, I'm just going to put it over here. So now with this become a stateless widget. Okay, so this widget is stateless widget. We don't need stateful because stateful widget consumes more memory. Now if you do come over here inside this data controller, so here we'll say on init being called. Okay, all right. So let's save it. But when does it being called? When we actually come to this page. So here within this, I can say final content page controller, say for example like this, and then get.put. Here we'll say content page. Okay, so we created a controller and we gave it some values, and then we also have a method which is onInit, which is also more like init state. Now we want this to be invoked, okay, this to get called, and we also want this page, which is content page, this screen over here, to invoke. To do that, here we have this get.put. And what is get.put? Get.put is a way to inject your controller in the system, because you see that this is a controller, but Flutter has no idea where to find this thing and kind of what does it do. So here you are saying get.put, you are telling Flutter, okay, I have a controller and I'm going to put it here in this screen. So that's the idea. Of course, there is a better way to do that, not just like this. Okay, all right. So whenever you have a controller using Getx, then you want it to be like activate, like created and initialized. Then you have to use get.put, but there are other versions like get.lazyPut, get.async.put. Those are a little different, but the idea is they all have put. So to let your Flutter program know that there is something like a controller, then you should use like get.put. But there is a typo. I think it's not data, it's not content page, actually it should be data controller, sorry, because our controller name is data controller. Sorry about that. Okay, so you have to put your controller's name. Okay, all right, and then over here do controller, like for example, this is the time that we could go ahead and print, say controllers loading value is here. You could do controller dot is loading. Okay, so whatever is loading. What is this? This one is coming from this guy. This is the value that we are getting. Okay, all right, so now let's go ahead and restart our program, and here we only see that get material has been created and get material has been initiated. So we don't see anything about our data controller. But now let's go to this content page, and here you see that data controller has been created, data controller has been initialized, and then at the same time we also see that first onInit being called. So as you see that onInit here, this one is being called. Okay, all right, you have to know this one. And then we also see that our controller's value is true, which is this one. Okay, now here one thing I want you to know, that the order, for example, whenever a controller is created, so onInit is always called first. As soon as a controller created and initialized, this method would always get called first. Okay, so this is a great point, entry point for initializing your data, because as I said that a controller deals with data. Now this controller, the data that it deals with, we want to use it in a certain screen, for example content page. So the data has to be initialized first, and then we can use that, right? So that's why it's more logical that this one initialized even before our build method continues. As you see that whenever it hits this one, it initialized and created, and then this one gets printed, and then this one gets printed. So we do see that the order is like the controller's onInit method always gets first whenever you have a line like this. Okay, all right. So this is a great place to initialize your data. Now here we could also say print, for example, on init, setting loading value. So here, for example, so this is our variable that we want to print. So one thing I want to do over here, I'm going to copy this and then value, and then I want to set a new value to it. So here I'll say false. Okay, all right. So now I'm going to copy this and put it here. Okay, on and it changed loading values. Okay, so first this is get cold, and then we work on the data, like this is a boolean, and then we print it. Okay, all right. So let's go back. Okay, now let's look at it like this, and then let's come over here. So it's being called on it, changed loading values to false, and now the controller on this UI, the UI also rated as false, as you can see over here. Okay, so see the order correctly. It's very important. You always have to know that onInit always gets called first as soon as the program hits get.put. Okay, all right, so you have to know this one, and then you can initialize your data. So this is a great place. So we are learning this, the reason because we want to initialize data here. And another important thing that you should see here, we see that it's been created and initialized like that. Okay, all right. Now if I go back here, you'll also see something interesting. onInit, so data controller on delete has been called and deleted from memory, and this is awesome. So which means that the controller that was created early, it was actually was saved in the memory, but it is only saved to when it's related to certain UI. So in this case, this UI is content page. So here we are. Okay, so this is content page. So as soon as this is opened, everything is created and initialized, and we see everything. But as soon as you close it, this controller is also destroyed or removed from memory. This is good because with this you can save memory on your phone, because if you have, say, hundreds of pages on your application, then if each of the page has a controller, they will have huge data. So you don't want to keep them alive unless you need one or two controllers to be alive. But in general, we don't need that. So most of the time in each controller, a controller should be related with certain feature or screen, I would say like that. And when the screen is popped out, like for example now it is popped out, the controller related to that screen should be removed from memory, and Getx does all this thing for you automatically. Okay, and I think there is also another feature here. We can look here. Let me go ahead and copy this. I'm gonna put it here, and instead of onInit, we're gonna call it onClose. Okay, so here we have onClose. All right, so here we can say onClose being called. All right, so we don't need this anymore. Okay, all right, let's restart our app because we have changes in our controller. So now we have this, and let's go and see this. Okay, so as you see that onClose is opposite of onInit. onInit initializes and gets called first, and when you exit the program, close gets called first. Whenever on close gets called, I mean, I wouldn't say at first, actually at last, even though the log is different because this is a system log. So as soon as on close is hit, everything is destroyed. But on close is hit whenever you remove or get out of a screen. Okay, so that's how it works. So in this section we learned a lot about Getx and how to create a controller, what is on init, and how we use on init to initialize data. And on init always gets called first when a controller is created. And then we also have on close. On close actually destroys the controller, which is used to save memory. So we'll continue our work in next tutorial. Okay, so let's move on. The other thing that we want to see right here, like how do we set this value? Okay, so let's go ahead and check that. Now here, if you use Getx, as I said, that you'll have the variable, and then to get the value you'll have dot value. Now to set the variable, so here we can say set, and then here we will say is loading. Okay, and then bool val, so this is the value, and then here simply would do like is loading dot value equal val. Okay, so this is called getter, this is called setter. So within setter actually we set the value. Okay, all right, now since we are here, let me go ahead and change this. So this one we don't want to change the value here. Okay, and then once this is done, here we could say controller dot is loading equal false. Okay, so if you have a setter, you can use the controller object and then directly assign value to it. So that's how it works. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this and put the log over here. Okay, all right, now to differentiate between these two, I'm gonna have 1 and 2 so that we know that this is the first one, this is the second one. So let's go ahead and restart our app. All right, now here we go. So as you see that the first one was true, the second one was false. Okay, all right, so the idea is you can have a reactive variable, the variable, and then you can change the value. To change the value, you can do it within your controller, or you can also do it using your from your UI, within the UI. Okay, all right, now here as you see that here we have this return statement. Now I'm going to restructure the code. Okay, right, now here I want to introduce something called OBX, and why we need that. For example, say here we have this screen, and in this screen we are supposed to load data, okay, within init method. So as we load, there would be delay, and as there is a delay, what to show first? Do you want to show the screen or loading screen? So there is a toggle between the loading screen and the actual information. The toggling happens through using OBX, and OBX also comes from Getx. Okay, so, and how it works. All right, so here now let's go ahead and cut this, and then here I can have OBX, and then here the first thing I want to do is I'm looking for controller object and is loading. I'm checking on it. I'm gonna say if it is true, if the value is true, then here I want to show you that okay, here I have a child widget, and which is text, and here I can say loading. All right, and if it is not true, then the other condition over here, which is our scaffold. Okay, all right, make sure you have it correctly. So at the end there are 2, and over here 2, between this there is this colon. Okay, all right, Now let me reformat the code so that you know and it looks better. So the idea is, if you have this OBX and you're trying to read value, so if it is true, then we'll say it's loading. Otherwise, if it is it's scaffold. Scaffold means the rest of the UI. Okay, so remember, when the data is the controller is created, initialized, the initial value is true. So if it is true, we'll say okay, it's loading. And sometimes later here we actually set the value, and then that it's set to false. That means this condition is not true. So we are supposed to show scaffold. Now let's restart our app, and here we are. Okay, right, but we don't see anything called loading. Okay, well, now there is a problem because, well, it happens very fast, extremely fast, so we don't see that actually, that there is this loading thing. Now we can simulate it simply. Now first thing here, we can create a method. We can call it void. Okay, and here we can call it loading data, something like this. And then here we can simulate a delay. To do that, here we can say delayed, and then here we say duration and seconds 2, and after that here we know that it needs a callback function. Okay, all right. Okay, here we can say that print we are waiting for 2 seconds. Okay, waiting for 2 seconds. Okay, right. And not only that, after waiting for 2 seconds, I want to set this value. Okay, now of course this is not recognized over here. So here first, let's go ahead and call loading data. And then I can simply pass this one here. And it will say add positional parameter. We are good to go. And that changes. So this variable, whatever we pass, it is here. Okay. So the idea is we are trying to show a reactive screen, which is part of Getx state management, managing the state of the UI, state of the variable. So here we create the controller and we set the value to true, and then we hit this method. This method actually waits for 2 seconds, and then it sets the value to false. And as this happens, now here magic happens, because build method will continue anyway. Okay, build method will continue regardless whatever it is here. Okay, so first time it will say true, and then it would show us loading. Okay, all right, and then after 2 seconds is done, this is set to false. Then over here we'll fall back to this one. Now we wrap all the conditions around OBX because your screen is changing actually all the time. Only do OBX, which is part of Getx state management, and then the UI would be reactive. Let's go ahead and restart our screen over here, the application, and as you see, loading. 2 seconds later we set, but we can do it much better. So I mean, to make it more beautiful over here, we can do another scaffold, and then here say body. Okay, and then here we can have like this. Okay, loading, or you can also have like this circular progress indicator, okay, which is also much better. Let me restructure the code. Now it looks better. Let's restore our application. Now let's come over here. So it's loading for 2 seconds and the data is done, and then here we see our screen. Awesome. Okay, so with this you understand actually the power of Getx. Of course we haven't actually loaded any JSON data, but we'll do that. Okay, all right, so here we learned how the change of the variable influenced the screen UI and how the UI should be updated. Okay, all right, so now with this we understand all this mechanism. Okay, so most of the time if you work with Getx and external data, you have to have this is loading a kind of variable, and then you should have a setter and getter, and in different occasions you'll use both of them. and by controlling them you can control the UI, and to control the UI you should always use OBX, and OBX comes from Getx. So with this we wrap up about our understanding about our Getx and OBX, and which is related to controller. But we are not done yet. We'll continue in next section. All right, to continue, now here I'm going to go ahead and create a method. Well, I think the method I can create here, and then here the method type is future void, and here load JSON data, like that. So this is the method that we want to use to load our JSON data. Okay, and let's see, because it's future we need async, and then over here we can just simply go ahead and call this one. Within this we'll load our data. Okay, to load the data, the very first thing over here we'll do final string, and then here we'll say JSON string, and here we'll use a wait and root bundle, something like that, and then load string, this one. Okay, so what do you want to load? Now you want to load the data, and where is this data? In our case, the data is inside this JSON folder, JSON, and then detail JSON. Okay, now let's look at our popspec.yml file. Okay, here it is, and here we're already saying that it is JSON. So we have the JSON folder mentioned, so we can say assets. Well, in this case we don't have our assets folder, but this assets means the assets to this pop spec, so we can directly use this JSON now here, and then the idea is detail.json. I believe that's the name. Okay, detail.json. Okay, all right, so this is how it should work. Now to go further, even before we go further, actually we can continue and test it. So right now if we restart our application, and when we go to the content page, we'll see that it should be loading. Okay, at least it's loaded here as a string. Okay, all right, now let's go ahead and restart. We did, and let's come over here. Hopefully we don't have any issues. Okay, so hopefully it is loaded, because here we don't see any error. Okay, if we don't see it, let's continue. So here we can say final JSON data, and then here we'll have JSON decode. In general, when you get the data from external source, JSON data, you also want to decode it. Here it is more like string. Okay, so let's go ahead and print it over here, JSON string, JSON string. Okay, and here you'll say print JSON. Well, I think I was okay, let me go ahead with cap over here, JSON data. Okay, all right, so now let's restart our application. Now let's come over here. So as you see that these are JSON string, so these are all string, exactly what we have loaded, and then we have JSON decoded data. Okay, now when you do the decode, it strips out the double quotation. So in general, whenever you load data, JSON data, it could be string, whatever it is, after that you should decode it. Okay, so that's what we did over here. You cannot use a string in an object, because our purpose is data encapsulation, which is called creating object. Then you cannot have a string, so we have to do decode. Okay, right, and for now we don't need this. Looks like we don't have any issue with any of these places. Okay, right, So we did the decode, and then this is the interesting part. All this thing we're doing like is loading that value. This time here we're gonna do is loading dot data dot something like that. Okay, data.obs. But now here this data model is not reactive, so here we could do obs. Now we made it reactive, and as we did that, here we could access the data variable and it will have value. Okay, so this is the value. Now here we'll have data model, detailed data model, okay, like this. But we don't want to use this constructor anymore. We just want to pass it to this dot from JSON, and then here we're gonna pass our JSON data. We are good to go. All right, so now this data itself will have all the values, because right now this is reactive. Okay, right now this is reactive. Reactive means that it has a new value. It is a new value. Okay, now we're going to continue on this more, because previously when we didn't make it reactive, which means we didn't use OBS, actually we didn't show the data in our UI. Okay, we should have, but we didn't. Okay, like for example the title, text, name, this thing all could be changed by reading from here. But now since this is a reactive and the data has come, and we can also use the new data. Okay, all right, but since we already have is loading, we don't want to show any empty data. Okay, you can, but it's because we have is loading, as long as the data is loading, as you can see over here from here, so we can just wait. So we can show the circular progress indicator, and when the data is ready, we can just simply get the data and use it. Okay, now since this is data over here, we can also make it private actually. So now over here we do private. In Flutter or Dart, when you have an underscore, that becomes private data. So here we could do get data. All right, just simply like that, data dot value. So whatever is inside this value, we're gonna go ahead and use that. Okay, awesome. So now with this, our data loading is done, and once the data is loaded, we actually assign it to our OBS variable. And since this is an OBS variable, actually we can okay, so here if we want to show that, actually we need to do a little more change in this controller, and this change is also about Getx. One thing you have to know that, well, when we are in detailed JSON, now here actually it's a list of map. So it's a map, it's a map, it's a map, it's a map. So inside the list we also have this for maps. Okay, and map data is also a little bit like JSON. Now this is a different concept I'm not going to cover here. I have other tutorials, so you can follow that. So it'd be more focusing on just Getx. So here this is a list of maps, and also we have this issue over here that list is not a subtype of map. Okay, so we do have some mismatch. Now to work with this over here, we need to make some changes. So we are not going to directly use like this, so we'll have some changes. Okay, so let's declare the new variable. So we want to declare a list. So here we'll say RxList, because remember this is a list, right? Okay, now each of the map, this is a map, right? So each of the map over here corresponds to our data model. So the data model, I'm talking about this one. Okay, so inside this list we'll have data model. So what is our data model? Detailed data model. This is a very simple idea, because data model represents each of them. Now there are many of them here, so it becomes a list. So inside our list we put detailed data model. Now RxList is a reactive list which is coming from Getx, okay, because we want to make it observable, so that's why we have this one. And here we can say data list equal, here we'll have detailed data model, and then it's an empty list, and here we're gonna say OBS. Okay, so here when you declare your data type, which is detailed data model, and then here this is an empty list, and this is an OBS, so it's an empty list of reactive variable. That's what we say over here. And then here we just want to get the list, because in the UI you cannot show directly this one, you always have to get the value. So here detailed data model, and then here we can say get, and data list equal data list dot value. Okay, all right, so this is what we want. And let's see that whether we need that. Well, let's keep it as it is, we ignore this. Okay, now over here in this method we also make changes. So far this is okay, but this one actually give us a list. If you remember that, we can go ahead and print over here, print Json data. If you remember early that Json data, after decoding, it is also a list. So let's go ahead and check on this. All right, so here as you see that it is a list. Okay, so there are many of them inside this. Okay, right. So instead of assigning it to a variable like JSON data, we can assign it to a list. Okay, so here we can say final. Well, we don't have to do it like this. We can just simply say, for example, final list. Say for now, put it dynamic. Okay, all right, just like this. So now we are saving this in a list rather than a variable, but now this causes a problem. Now since this is causing a problem, we have to, because this one doesn't expect a list, it just expects one map data. As you can see over here, this just expect one map data, it doesn't expect a list. So what to do in this case? Now in this case over here, let's see, I'm gonna cut this one, and then we could do JSON data dot, here there's a map function, so we can access each of the item within it. So here we can call it item, and then over here each of them we pass to our this object over here, the one that we had, and we're gonna put it here. Okay, right. And after this we want to convert it to a list, so here we'll say to list. Now this is the basic Dart problem, not really Getx thing or Dart knowledge. Now here we don't need the data anymore, here we said data list. Okay, now the error should be gone. So hopefully it makes sense that how it works here. The reason why we took the map, because over here this map function, using this we can access each of the item, and then we assign it to our from JSON method, because from JSON method expects a map. Okay, and then eventually when everything is done we convert it to a list, because this is a list. So that's what happens over here. Now with this our data is more formatted and it is ready to be used in the front end. Okay, so since this is done, now we can go to our content page, and the very first thing, as you'll see that here we have James Smith. So we can change this name. And how do you do that? Well, we could just simply access our reactive variable, which is using this controller itself. So this data list, which is the reactive variable, we have the getter, and then here we could access the first one, and then we can access its name or his name. Okay, so as you see that the first item, this guy's name is Dastagir, so that's how we access. Now this is possible. Why this is possible? That we can access the variable value. That is a variable list right over here. The reason is this itself is reactive, so which is saved in the memory, and this is shared across our application, and which has been done through using Getx. Okay, so yeah, Getx lets you to create shareable memory. So this data list is a list which is a shareable memory, which means other part the application can access it easily. But of course you have to do it through controller. So the first idea is that you have to create a controller, and within it you have to have reactive variables, in this case this one, and this is the getter. And then you can load your data. Now data loading depends on your Dart knowledge, not really Getx knowledge. Okay, so once you load the data, all you need to do, you have to assign the value to your Getx variable, and then inside your UI you can access it directly. So that's how it works. Okay, all right, great. Now since this is the first guy, we can also access the second guy. If you access the second index, which is John Smith, you can go to the third one. Okay, right, like this. So we'll continue. Well, and then next we can come over here, say for example this popular context right below it. Okay, so this page builder. Now page builder, inside there is a list, and as you can see that it has item count. So right here actually we could do like this. Here we could do controller the data list, and then here we get the length of our list, and then each of them we want to access as an index. So let's write here index. I think let me change it to index, it's more readable to me. All right, and then the first one is a title. So here we could do controller dot data list, then we access the index, and then here we do title. Let's go ahead and save it, and as you see that the title has changed. Beautiful. So this is awesome. And then over here we can also change this text. So all you need to do, we can copy all of this and then put it here, and then instead of name we could do text. Okay, let's go ahead and save it. Okay, right, it showed up as you see, but it does have some overflow issues. So here we want to change the text, say 14, so we don't need that big. So right now here this is great. And one other thing we could do, the color itself, we don't want to do this color. I think we could do colors dot white. Okay, with this it looks much better and good looking. All right, and after that here we can also replace this images. So here we could do like this, whatever we had early, and we can just access img, the image part. Now here we do see that there are images, as you see that. Okay, all right, so now one thing we could do, well, we don't have to maybe show all these images for all these guys, so we can just limit it to, you know, say 1. So it would always show the first one for each of the list. Okay, all right, you can do more stuff over here if you do want. All right, so in that case this row I'm not going to use it for now, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove that. If you do want, you can keep that because I think it makes more sense. Okay, all right, but now the other thing you could do here, wrap it inside row children, and then we can do here, say for example main axis alignment, let's start. Okay, so we're gonna start from the left side, so which makes more sense. All right, and then we do have this recent content, context, this and that. Okay, and let's see, the recent context is this one, which is this guy vertically that's been given. So it's the same as the earlier one. We can redo it over here, controller.data_list.length. So it's pretty much the same. Looks like we have the wrong one as a copy, data list, and here I think we have I as an index, so I'm not going to change that this time. Okay, right, so this appeared, and we also have something called status. We don't need that, so we have text and we have time. Now for text itself, I do believe we can just simply show his name over here. We don't need this text itself, so let's go ahead and change it. Data list index I, and then here we just simply go ahead and show the name. Let's go ahead and look at this guy. All right, okay, cool. And then the last one is time over here. So controller data list I, and then I do believe we also have time. Let's put it there, and okay, here we do see the time. Okay, and then here we could do, I think, font weight dot bold, I guess we can use. So a little bit of change in the time itself. And then over here we do see that text, the alignment doesn't look good. Here we could do text alignment, text align dot center. Now this is in center, but we could start with start. So over here, now let's give it a little bit of height, say 50. Now it's pretty much like this, and this is the list over here, and over here we have more information, the project and the project detail, and the picture here, just a name and the time when the context happened. So yeah, this is about Getx and state management. So where you store the value first and then you access it in the UI, and you are good to go. All right, next we'll see how to actually click on any of this, and we actually pass the name, title, text, and more information about this guy. Okay, so it's like passing data to a next screen, just pass one data, but here we are loading all the data together. But next we'll see, if we click on any of this, they will go to the related, they'll come over here, but we'll pass the related info. Okay, so that's what we'll focus in next section. Okay, so we said that we want to read the total items over here, not items, actually total participants, and then show it over here, and also change this. Now to do that, first at the top we have to come over here at the top, and then we'll also see like we have to get our controller object. Now there are a few different ways to get the controller object. Okay, well, over here you'll see that this is stateless widget. Okay, so here we could also do GetView, and inside this we can say data controller. Okay, now if you do like this, you actually don't have to get the controller, data controller specifically. So in this case, with this, whenever you open this page, it will look for that controller automatically. Okay, so that's one way to work. But the other way, like for example, a lot of people do it. For here, you'd say final data controller, and then you can say controller, and then here you'll say get.find and the data controller, this one. So this is the other way to find your controller, the controller that you created whenever you first came to this page. Remember, okay, let me go ahead and restart this so that you know what I say. So when you click on this here, you see that data controller has been created and initialized. So when you go over here, it's created and initialized, right? So, but that's the page of content page, right? Now we want to go to detail page. So since this controller is still in the memory, because it's not destroyed yet, it's only destroyed if you go back. But if you go further in the screen or navigation, it is not destroyed in general. So you can just directly find the controller object and assign to it. Okay, so we are finding a controller object and assigning to it. So that's other way to go ahead and work with this controller. Okay, the first way, you can also do GetView. If you do GetView, you don't have to write any of this. Okay, all right, so it's your preference that how you do this. So I will show you later that how to use GetView. Anyway, so our controller is here. Now since our controller is here, we can go down to this guy over here, first this 11. So we don't want to show it like this. So here we would say controller dot data list dot length. Okay, all right, now let's go over here and you see total 4. But of course this also has to be changed, right? So we'll change it. Now we can simply copy this and then come over here, assign the length, and then also over here this one, but in this case not the length. We can just simply access the I for index. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and save it. But one thing we also need to do, which is img object. We need to get to the img object. So as you see that, so total 4 participants and their information is over here, as you can see. So you can click on this girl, the same. Okay, right, now we can do a lot of fancy stuff with this, which we'll do. For example, we can also reorder based on the guy who shows up here. So I believe this guy is this guy, so he could go first and others can go last. We can also do that, which we'll do. But anyway, so you get the idea over here that how to work with objects and find controller. Now instead of speaking of finding controllers, here we could also do GetView, and then here we could say data controller. So it will just simply go ahead and find the controller for you, and then you can just simply comment that out. Now even if you comment that out, this controller object exists automatically, because remember here we're already using controller. Okay, so data controller, get controller. Even though we didn't write get controller, we don't have any statement in our controller class. If you go and see, we didn't have a getter, but as soon as you use GetView, so you can get the controller object directly. So let's restart our app. Let's observe the behavior. Here we are, and then here you go, you see we don't have any issues. So this is other convenient way to find a controller in this whole screen. Okay, in the whole screen we are trying to get this controller rather than writing like this. So it depends on you. Okay, so which approach you want to use. But for example, here if you have say you want to get many controllers objects, so you cannot do that. I think you can only get one of them, so one controller. But if you do like this, you can have many instances of different controllers. Okay, for example, this could be data controller, this could be detail controller, the other one could be auth controller. You can get as many objects as you want, but with this you can only get one controller object. So there's also a limitation, but there are different ways to do that. Okay, so let's move on. And from here, as I said, that we want to go to this page and we want to pass related information. And how to do that? Now, to be able to do that, this time we are going to use a concept in Getx which is called arguments. Now over here, like in our popular contest over here, you'll see that we have a route. So let's go ahead and find the route. So this is the route. Okay, now if you hover over on this, you see get.toNamed. It takes a string, and then there are some optional options, or actually arguments, I would say. So these things you may pass, you may not pass. Okay, so but in this case we'll do that. Once again, as you see that you can pass arguments, so that's what we'll do over here. So let's go ahead and pass arguments. So here we do arguments, and then over here we can pass our object, the thing that we want to pass it to this screen. Now to do that, what do you want to pass? Well, in this case we want to pass one of the objects. What is this object? The one that we have in our data list. Okay, all right, so remember this is inside like, let's go down over here. I think we need to go back, come back here, right? Actually it's here. So each of the data list we can pass through it. So simply here we would do controller dot data list. Okay, so now this becomes an object, but it's a complete list. Actually we just want to pass one of them, so that's why we take the index. So because this is a list and we pass an index, so it returns us one of the data model object, the one that we created. As you can see over here, detailed data model. So this part is a list, right? And we are taking one of them by using this index. So let's go ahead and reformat it. Okay, looks like this. So if you want to pass an object, simply you can use arguments. It could be of any type, any data type. Now this, we have to receive that in our screen or UI, which is over here. Okay, all right, but in this case, once again, it's a StatefulWidget we don't need. We can simply go ahead and use a stateless widget, because if you use stateless widget, it will save memory. So here we'll do st detail page. Okay, st for stateless widget. Okay, right, everything else stays the same. The other thing we could do now is like getting the object, like we are passing it as an argument. Now we have to get it. So here we could say final detail data model, and we can say data, or simply you can say data model, and then here we could do get dot arguments as detail data model. So we have to cast it, whatever the arguments. Remember, arguments is dynamic, so we want to cast it to our data model object. Okay, now we are good to go. Now over here, since we are passing this, so let's go ahead and check on this. So the first thing we have is name, so we can simply go ahead and replace this. So here we'll say DataModel dot name. Right, so let's go ahead and save it. Okay, we may restart the app. Okay, right, now we are here. Now let's click on this. Now as you see that the name appeared over here. Now if you go ahead and work on this, so that's a different name. And then this guy, this is also another name. And this information are all aligning with the names over here. So that means it's working. So Yusuf MD. And then we can also change the title and the text. Let's see where they are. So here we are. So here we'll have DataModel dot title, and let's save. Okay, it showed up. And then here DataModel dot text. And we remember earlier we are using 14. Okay, so it looks like over here even 14 a little bit big. Let's go ahead and use 12. Okay, all right. Now the other thing you'll see here, it says that name, deadline, and these things. Now we don't have dynamic information for these things in our application. We don't have, so we're just gonna keep them as it is for now. So the next thing we want to show is like total participants. So this part actually we can change. We can read all the data. Okay, like for example here we have this 5 items for 5 people, but in our case we just have 4 items like in our data list. Okay, so we can access the data list. Now how to do that? We'll do that in next tutorial. Okay, so we learned that we can pass data by passing an object, right, to another screen. Of course, there are alternatives in Getx and different ways to do that. And since this course is pretty much all about Getx, so I'm going to cover more concept on how to pass this thing. Now, passing object as an argument is fine. Sometimes this is useful, but in real life, maybe most of the time you'll not use this way of passing arguments. So we will take a better approach, and which you might find more useful if you do connect with REST API. So that's what we would be covering. Now to do that, first we need to come over here. This get detail page over here, we're gonna declare a variable. So here we'll say int id. Okay. All right. Now inside this over here, I'm gonna cut this, and then I'm going to have a string like this, and then here id, detail page id, and whatever the id we are passing. So this is more like web routing. Okay, so you pass the id as a query parameter. So here you can have a note passing the id as a query parameter. So if you come from web routing, you know that that's how it works, and this is the better way. So in general, in your app, you should be also doing a routing like this, not really passing an object. So you pass an ID, and then you retrieve an object for that ID. So for example, if you have a network request, in general, you'll get, say, your product ID, and you'll send that ID to the backend, and backend will find that ID and return information related to that ID. So that's how it works. Now in this case over here, of course, we'll have error, so we can pass, say. Now one other thing we may need to change over here, okay, we don't need actually. Let's keep it as it is. And then here simply we pass ID. And what is the ID? That's the index. So wherever we click on any of this, we actually immediately retrieve that index. Okay, here we can also do print tapped index. Here we'll say index. Okay, so wherever you click, you get that index immediately. All right, and if we are passing like this, we don't need this anymore. Okay, now we can come to our detail page over here, and within this detail page you'll see that we have this guy as a data model. We also don't need to get as arguments. We can just simply do a better approach, because since this is a query parameter, here I need to retrieve it as a parameter, and inside this the parameter itself is ID. Okay, all right, now of course here we will have an issue, because as you see that this is not the type, so we can just simply say string. Actually we are passing it as a string, not really an ID. Let's see. Now here it did say this string to this type, because it says it could be nullable. Okay, so that's why it says like that. Okay, because the get parameter itself here, this one, you can see this value is optional, so this is nullable in Getx, so that's why you have to use this question mark over here. Now of course it throws us other error, as you can see, data model, this and that. Okay, so how to solve this issue? Now since we have this ID over here, and we also have this data controller, so we can definitely work on this. Okay, so now we can define like this final, say for example controller. Well, it's not actually controller, because we have the ID. All we need to do is access the controller list, and for that ID we can get an object. So here we can say data, just simply like that, or you can also call it data model, doesn't matter. And then remember, because of this GetView controller, we can access the controller object, and then we can actually access data list. And if we do that, for that data list, actually we have this ID, right? We can use that ID, but the problem with ID right now is not a string, it's not an integer, so we need to convert that to an integer. Okay, so here we can say final index. Here we could say int dot parse, and then here you can pass this ID to convert it to an integer. Now it looks like, okay, here you need to say it's not null, and then here you can do index, and for that index actually you can retrieve this object. So now everything works together better, because here we already have this controller object. Now since we have the controller object, we don't need to find this as well, and then we also don't need to pass the earlier data model the way we are passing. So we are passing the ID, and then for that ID we can just retrieve the object. Now object itself would be data model type, and you see that the error has been gone, the earlier error, everything stays the same. Now this is pretty much more like networking, because in network you'll pass the ID to the server, and server would get that and return you information. So this is our information. Okay, all right. Okay, so now let's go ahead and restart our application and see whether everything works fine or not. And then let's go to the next page. Okay, here we do have an issue. Now since this crashing, let's go ahead and put a log over here. So this is the log that we want to put. So if the ID is null, or ID is empty, or after parsing it, if we get it null, we say invalid ID, and then we'll have container. So let's restart and we'll see. Now here container of course means that empty screen, don't show anything, which should be a black screen. Okay, now here you see that this is our route. So this is our route, and then it says invalid ID. As you see that actually obviously we have a mistake because our ID is this one. We're supposed to pass 0 for the first one. So I think the error is over here. So let's remove that. And now let's see how things go. I'm gonna remove this log. Let's click on this. Now this is correct, and this is beautiful because as you see that detail page here, we have this ID as 0. Okay, now that's for the first one, and this information is also correct, these things. And if you go to the say the next one, this is also correct. And if you come over here, this is also correct. As you see that everything is working fine. So that's how you do actually the routing, and this is a better way of doing routing because you're passing dynamic ID. Now this could help you for debugging. So the idea is if you want to pass object rather than passing an object, you can pass your product ID or any kind of ID that comes from database, and you pass it to the next screen. And to pass it to the next screen, you can pass it something called query parameter. So over here you directly pass as a part of this routing parameter over here. And if you do that, of course you don't need to make any change over here, but on the screen you can grab that as a parameter. Okay, you can pass ID, whatever the name you call it, you have to grab it. All right, and then you are good to go. All right, okay, so I'm going to remove this one for now. Okay, so that is clean. All right, okay, and I'm going to also remove this. All right, now before wrapping up, I think we can also set this image. I think it should be somewhere here, this guy, asset image. Okay, all right, so in this case here we had DataModel.img, and now this is fine. As you see that logo up. Okay, so this is more natural this time. Okay, right. Okay, so now we'll continue. So earlier we have seen that we can click on this and navigate to this new screen, and we want to do the same thing. Once we click on this, we also want to navigate to a new screen, I mean the same screen as this one. And how to do that? Now to be able to do that, we need to go to our content page, and over here somewhere in line 262 there is an expanded widget and there is a list view builder. So we are going to use this list view builder. As you can see that here we have this information. Okay, so hopefully we'd be able to click on that, and then we would go to a new screen, and here we already do see we have a container. So we can just simply go ahead and wrap this around gesture detector. So here I'm gonna have a widget and I'm gonna call it gesture detector. All right, and all we need to do here, we need to do on tap. Okay, and then over here we need to invoke the route, call the route. So the route was earlier, I believe, at the top. So let's scroll to the top. Where is our route? Let's see. Okay, so here the same exact one we can just copy and put it here. The only thing we need to change, instead of this instead of index, we can just say I, and we are good to go. So let's go ahead and save it. Okay, all right, now you click on this, it'll take you to this new page. This is awesome. You can click on John Smith, you go to John Smith and her page, and this is beautiful. So you can also scroll it here. All right, awesome. So now how do you go ahead and change the other thing? As we are saying, if you are viewing this person, then you have to put it over here, right at the top. I mean, that's how it should make sense in general. So that's what we want to do. So this is what we'll do in next section. So now we have to make change over here, this list, but this is our original list, so we should not change this thing. Okay, the idea is whenever we say, for example, go to this page, this guy should be first, no problem. But say, for example, John Smith over here, she should be the first one, right? Now we don't want to change our original list, so we have to create a new temporary list. So for this reason, we can come over here, and then we can create a new temporary list. So we're gonna copy the whole thing. Okay, so here we would say data temp list, and let me go ahead and copy this so everything else stays the same. Okay, all right, so now since this is done, we need to create a function to actually copy the original list, which is this one, and put it in this one. So we're gonna go ahead and create a new function. Now the function could be here void update temp list, which temp means temporary. Okay, and then over here we'll pass an index, because whatever we click on, we'll grab that one, and then we're gonna update our UI. So it should be relatively easy. So here we're gonna say list, and then detail data model, and here let's call it sorted list, and then here we're gonna say list dot from, and our original list a data list, this one. Okay, so whatever was in our original list, we take it and put it here. And then we are going to remove an item based on this index, the index that's given. For example, you click on this, the index is 1, right? So in our list, we'll remove that item, or save them item actually. First, we're gonna save them. So let's save them first. Detail data model and target item. So we have this sorted list, and we pass the index, and we get the item from it. Okay, so this is the one that we'll save. Say for example, if you click on her, that index would be 1. So we come to this sorted list, we take 1 and take the item. It's like we are getting a copy of this item and save it over here. And then now we are going to also remove here. So here also remove at. So we're going to remove it from our temporary list, which is this one. And then we're going to also insert it again. We removed it and insert. Now here we'll say inserted, well, insert at the beginning, the first one, and then target item. So you get the idea. So this is our another temporary list, and then we get a copy of that item based on this index, save it here, and then we also remove it because it could be in a random position. So we just remove it. It could be the second one, third one, fourth one, or anywhere in the list. And then we reinsert it. Okay, and then now this guy we also have to assign to our data template. So here we'll say assign all, and then here we'll have sorted list. Okay, right. So that's why actually we have had 2 temporary lists. One is this one within this function, and the other one is this one. Okay, all right. Now we need to go to our content page, and over here, so we can go ahead and call our method. So here is controller, and then update temp list, and just send the index. Okay, so if you click on this one, this index would be grabbed and call this one, this method. It would call this method, and then we can actually update our detail page over here. So now we cannot use this list anymore because this is the original list for this one and keeping track of everything. So here we'll have data temp list, and then here we'll also have temp list, and everything else stays the same. Now let's go ahead and restart our application, and then here let's load it. Click on this. Well, this guy is already the first one. Click on her. Now she's the first one, as you see. So you see that how it works. You click on her. She's the first one here. She's the first one here. Awesome. So now this is also being possible easily because of Getx, because we created this temporary OBS type variable, just putting everything from here to here. But before that, we had to do this moving items within the list. Okay, so this is very useful. So if you want to change something in general, you shouldn't use your original list. You should always keep a temporary list, and then if you need more temporary list, you can also create this one. So first here we created another temporary list, right? So we just copy everything from here, put it here, and within this you can change. It doesn't really matter because this guy we don't do anything on the UI. So this list we show it on the UI. Hopefully you learn something, and we'll continue in next session. Okay, so let's move on. Now the next state management related stuff we want to do is this one. As you click on this, it's going to go ahead and change, like showing that it has been added to the favorite, and how we do that using Getx. Now we'll simply start from new thing. What is this new thing? We're going to create a new controller because we want to manage it from a controller. So here I can create a new class, and we're going to say it fav controller dart. Okay, fav for favorite. All right, now here we're going to do a class, and we're going to call it fav controller extends Getx controller. Okay, and then right away we can declare rx variable, rx bool, and here we can call it fav, and we're gonna say, well, we're gonna make it private. That's the convention. And then here we'll say false dot obs. The full value is false, so immediately we're gonna create a getter fav, and here we'll say fav dot value. So we get the value of this thing from obs. Obs is an object, but we just want to get the value from this object, which is our bool. And then we also want to do one set fav, and then here we're gonna pass a boolean, and then what is it? It could be, you can call it value, it doesn't matter. And then here fav dot value, and you set the whatever the value that we pass. So that's the basic controller with this, but there would be other things as well. We'll see them. Okay, all right. Okay, so now since this is done, we need to inject this controller somewhere at the top when our application starts. So how to do that? Now here, one of the ways or places that we could do is right here. We do initialization. For example, here we could do get.put, and then here we can say fav controller. Okay, like that. So this is one way. When the app gets initialized, our controller would be initialized. Okay, all right, and then we'd be able to use that in our application. Okay, all right. So now let's see. Of course, you'll see that at the top fav controller has been created and initialized. Okay, all right. Okay, now after that we can go to our this screen, and the name of the screen is detail page. So right over here, and here you'll see that text. So we need to make it clickable. So here we're gonna wrap it around gesture detector, And then of course here we'll have this on tap event. Okay, right. Now as soon as we click on this, we can get an object of our fav controller. So here we can say that fav controller, and then here we can say get dot find, and then you can just pass the controller name. Controller name is fav controller. So that's how you find a controller instance. Okay, we are looking for an instance of this controller. Remember earlier it has been created at the top, and then when we going to use it in any other places we need this. Okay, so we have to find the instance. You don't recreate a new one, you just find the instance. Okay, now once that's done, right over here you could also well, right now we do it right, and after that here we'll have this value. So fav controller dot fav. Okay, this is the getter, you remember. I think, yeah, that was the getter. And then we can just negate it, fav controller dot fav. Okay, so whatever the value is this fav has, current value, we do the negation because this is a negation mark over here. And of course we can print it. So fav value is fav. Okay, all right. And looks like, okay, we need this guy actually. We cannot directly access fav. So here dot fav. Fav. Okay, all right. Let's go ahead and save it. And then if we click on this, we'll see that there should be a change. Let's see. Looks like let's restart our app from the screen and see if this is ready or not. Let's click on this. Okay, so looks like this guy, gesture detector. Okay, I have done it wrong. I'm sorry. I should wrap it around this container, not the text itself. Okay, sorry. So, but we can just simply, I can cut this. Okay, and I'm gonna remove this and remove this as well. We're good to go. All right, and all we need to do, wrap this around gesture detector. That should be good. Gesture detector, and then we already have done the work. Just put it, and you're good to go. All right, now you click on this, you'll see that fav value is true, fav value is false, so we are just toggling the value. Okay, all right. Okay, so now of course this change doesn't reflect in the UI, it's just in the console whatever we click. So to reflect in the UI over here, this particular widget, we can wrap it around OBX. Okay, so I'm gonna cut this, and then here I'm gonna say OBX, and then just put this one directly. But then if you go ahead and save it, you might get an error. The error here we have, it says that improper use of Getx has been detected. The reason is because here you see that you're trying to use OBX, but inside OBX you don't have any reactive variable. What I mean by that, you have to have this kind of variable. So here this fav has to be used inside this, or somehow any kind of reactive variable. So that's why it's causing this issue. But then we can actually easily use it. For example, as you see that it has a color, decoration color here, we can do this one. Okay, we can take fav, and then here we could do a conditional check. If fav is true, or if fav is false, maybe you could do this one first. If fav is false, we show this color, otherwise we show another color. Okay, like that. So that's how it should work. And let me see here. Okay, well, now the other problem with this fav is that it's not accessible here because this is a local variable. Okay, fav controller.fav. So fav controller is local. Now how to get rid of this issue then? So to get rid of this, here we can actually cut this, and then we can put it here somewhere inside our we can actually also put it outside. Okay, all you need to do, remove this const, I guess, and then you are good to go. Right, now down here, so you need to pass a color. Now to pass a color, let's see what color we can pass. Okay, I got it. So we do have at the top a container color, this one, which should be more like the background color, I believe. Okay, so let's come to this section over here, and then let's put it. So what we are doing over here, we are checking for a condition. What's the condition? If have is false, we're gonna show the whatever the color was there originally, but if you toggle the value, then it'll change to true. The value is true, we'll change the color. Let's go ahead and check it. As you see that it changes if you click it back. So now we are updating part of the screen. All right, now this is also beautiful. The reason is because let's come at the top here. So we have different items. Okay, so let's check on this, and here we are. Right, so let's go ahead and print. Okay, hello there. So let's save it. All right, okay, now anyway, let's toggle on this, let's toggle on that. You see this, and you see hello there, only one. So as you see that if you use Getx, your whole widget tree doesn't get built, which is very good, because you don't want to rebuild the whole widget tree, because rebuilding whole widget tree is very expensive. So in this case, hello there only print once, which means that, I mean, it's not building from the scratch. It's not building, the widget is not being built from the very beginning. It's being built just from where? From this child over here. We're just building this section over here. Other widgets are not being built, and we can see that the log is only printed once. Okay, so that's why Getx is better. But then the opposite, if you use set state, okay, for example, all of these things we could do locally. What do I mean by locally? For example, let's go ahead, we declare variable, okay, bool my fav equal false. Let's go ahead and check on this. So this is a new variable, which is my fav. So let me go ahead and copy that. Now let's comment this thing out over here. We're gonna comment this out, okay, and fav equal my fav. Okay, all right. And then here, of course, we cannot use this guy anymore, but we can still go ahead and let me see it quickly. Okay, like if fav is false, use this, otherwise that. Okay, Now let's go ahead and restart our app from the scratch and we'll see something interesting. Okay, now let's see, click on this, oh, in this case I think we first need to remove obx, otherwise it will tell you that you are using obx without any reason. So now here, of course no changes because we didn't trigger UI, but then over here we can print fav value is my fav. Okay, all right, so check on this. So it toggles the value, but of course we don't see it on the UI, right? Now to be able to see that in the UI, all we need to do is just call set state. Okay, now you cannot use set state in this case directly. What's the reason? The reason is because it's not a stateless, it's a stateless class. GetView is stateless. Okay, GetView is the same as stateless widget, right? So within stateless widget you cannot use this thing. Okay, you cannot use a set state, so that's the other problem. Okay, but if you do use a set state, for example, now we have a couple of issues over here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually comment them all out, okay, for now, because I'm trying to show you an example that why you should be using Getx. All right, okay, also comment this out. All right, okay, don't worry, we'll recover them very quickly, just follow my instructions. Okay, right, now this is a stateless. Inside stateless class you cannot use a set state, so you need to convert it to StatefulWidget. How I did that, I selected that, I'm on Mac, I hit option and enter. Okay, and then it pops up. So here I see StatefulWidget. Now this is a StatefulWidget. I can go down and then inside this I'm gonna say set state. Now let's say this. Okay, I think because we changed the widget, so we have to restart. Let's come over here. Now let's click on this. Okay, everything else is gone because we commented that out. But now here, as you see that we see hello there and hello there again and hello there again, hello there again, hello there again. But of course we also have to put it inside. Let's put everything inside. Okay, all right. All right, now let's click on this. So we do see that hello there every time. So one other thing, that my fav is toggling the value and we still don't see the update. If it is false, then we show this, but we see the other one. In this case we have to actually move it outside because every time it gets rebuilt. Yeah, that's true. Now it's good. Now I will show you, because this should be declared outside, because every time you rebuild this value gets initialized, because as you see that every time we click on this hello there, which means this guy gets printed. Okay, let's click on this again. So when you use set state and StatefulWidget, your whole widget or whole widget tree, the whole page gets rebuilt, and because we can prove it from this hello there, as you see that. Okay, all right, so that is very expensive operation because you don't want to rebuild everything, because this is unnecessary. If right now if I commented that, if I uncommented this, they would also get rebuilt. So you should use state management to avoid rebuild of the whole UI or whole widget tree, which is a bad operation unless if you really need that. So anyway, now I'm going to do Control Z or in Mac Command Z to retract my changes. So I'm just going to do this. Okay, I'm just going to do Control Z to take back what I had originally. Okay, now I'm going to save because we changed the widget style or type actually, so we need to restart our app. Okay, so now let's go ahead and check on this. Okay, right, so this is, here we are. Okay, right now, but now this arises a new problem. What is the problem? Okay, I didn't choose this value for this person, but it's still having the earlier value, right? Okay, remember John Smith, right now the value is yellow, right? Now earlier for him I changed the value, now it also became yellow. Or if I change this value for this guy, now if I go and check on John Smith, the same. So the value that's being stored, it is everywhere. I mean, you can also check for her, the same. So we don't want to do it like this. We don't want to share the same value to everyone. So this value should be specific to specific people, because this page, whatever this page, you mark it as favorite for this guy, not for other people, right? So now this is the problem. Now, there are a few ways to solve this. We can create local data storage and keep information there, and then we can retrieve the information and check, and then we can show it on the screen for a certain person. That's one way to go. The other way, we can also do it by using networking, which means that store the data. Like for example, if you click on her, so if you mark her as a favorite, and as soon as you mark her as a favorite, you can store the data in a network, in a server, and then when you come back to this page next time, you call on the server, you call an API request and check the value, and based on that you update the UI. So this is we'll do, and now it looks like a little complicated. It is not complicated if you have done REST API or if you know how to work with the API. Now because we are doing Getx tutorial, so we'll see how to do API or RESTful API with Getx. So we'll try to keep it as simple as possible, but this is also part of the learning. And in the real world, if you do have this kind of interaction, definitely you'll save it in your server in a database. Okay, so that's why it's important to learn this concept and how we can use Getx to do that. So we'll start this thing in our next session. Okay, so this is where we left off last time, and now we're going to continue. And as we are saying that this data we want to save in our database or in a server. Now in this case, because this is pretty much a beginner's course about Getx, and the whole course is all about Getx, so I don't want to go to the complexity of building a back end. So we are going to use Firebase, and Firebase is a very secure server, so you are good to go. So in this tutorial we'll stick to Firebase. Now to save our data in Firebase, we need to create a Firebase project. So let's head over to the Firebase and create a project. So now this is my Firebase dashboard, console dashboard I would say, and I'm going to create a new project. And here I'm going to type in Getx Firebase project. Okay, all right. So this is what I'm going to do, but looks like they don't understand the underscore, so let's go with hyphen. All right, and then here we're gonna say continue. Well, let's enable it, but I'm not sure it's a big of a help. And then let's go ahead and create the project, so it'll be done very soon. And that's the only thing that we need to do over here. And then later on we are going to connect our project from console, I mean Flutter Fire. Now for Flutter Fire I do have tutorials, you guys can watch that. It's pretty simple, just go ahead and install the tool. I'm not going to do it manually, because if you do it manually you might have a lot of errors. Okay, all right, so now here let's open our project terminal, and then within it over here I have to first make sure that Firebase login, make sure that you are logged in, okay, with your Gmail account. I'm already logged in. And then over here I'm going to go ahead and run Flutter Fire configure. Okay, so this is going to connect with our Firebase, and looks like, okay, we are not in the directory, so let's ls. So actually I should be in this directory, so I'm gonna do cd flutter app getx app clear, and then over here I'm going to do this one, Flutter Fire configure. So it's going to pull out all the projects that I have in my Firebase. So I have a lot of projects actually, so I need to look for Flutter Getx Firebase, something like that the project name was. So I'm going to go at that over here to select this. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna hit enter and hit enter, and it's pretty much all about hitting enter, enter, and enter. So it's going to register for both iOS and Android. It's pretty easy way to work with this, otherwise you might get a lot of error if you do it manually. So hopefully it'll be done very soon. Okay, right, and here the files and will be updated to apply configurations. Do you want to continue? Yes, we'll say yes. Okay, right, now hopefully that's done, and if it is done then you'll see some new information, like for example it's already here, but it does look like we have some issues. Okay, all right, now the issue is pretty obvious because we didn't install this, so we have to go ahead and install the plugin as well. So here we would do Flutter. Okay, let me go ahead and clean it first. So here we do Flutter pub add this one, so it'll go ahead and add it. Okay, all right, as you see the error is gone because it's already installed. And we're gonna install another one, I think it's called messaging. This is the plugin name, I believe. Yes, is the correct one. We need both of them. We need that one for getting token. Now, well, if you do see your popspec.yml, you'll see that, okay, these two plugins are added. Okay, all right. And then over here, as well as if you observe this app directory here, Google services.json, we already have it, but that's for Android. We can also view it for iOS, and here Google service info.plist. So as long as these two files are there, you are good to go. Hopefully you are good to go. And now we're gonna verify that it works. I mean the Firebase is integrated with our app. Now to be able to do that here, we have to do something called widgets flutter binding dot ensure initialized. Okay, because we are going to use third-party services, So it's important that you have this one at the top, and then over here we do await Firebase dot, let's see, I need to import it first, and then over here I think we'll have initialize app. You have to go for that one, and then over here we have to have this async modifier. Okay, so that's the first part. So now we're going to restart our app to make sure that things are good, and we do see here it says that unable to connect to channel, and in this case I'm going to stop the app and restart it. Now after running this, a lot of you might have an issue on iOS. If you do have issues, few things, make sure you come to this pod file, and the first thing you need to do, change this to 13 or higher, and then over here you may need to remove these two lines. Okay, and once you do that, you can actually reinstall pod. You are good to go. And after that, as you see that I don't have any issues. Okay, so everything is working fine. All right, so I'm going to stop the app and rerun. Okay, and let me run the app again, make sure that it works fine. And the other change you guys might need to do, also open it, the runner, open it, and here set a higher version that should be good enough to set this project up and running. Okay, now the building first time may take a little bit of time, so you need to wait. It looks like it is done in my case because I've already done it once. Okay, all right, now on closed being called, here we are. We're starting again, syncing the file. So it looks like we don't have any issues with this Firebase app initialization. Our app is connected to Firebase. As long as you see this one, you will not have any issues, so you're good to go. So that's it about Firebase. In next tutorial we'll continue with building our Getx services, Getx repositories, and continue from there. Okay, so now let's move on, and since we wanna have a cleaner code base, so over here I'm going to go ahead and create a new directory, and I'm gonna call it service, okay, or services, because I'm using plural convention. And then within it here I'm going to go ahead and create a new class, Dart file, and here we can call it fab repository.dart. I think we might have a typo here, so let's go ahead and fix it. So it should be Dart. Okay, right. Now over here we're gonna create a class, and we're gonna call it fab repository. All right, and within it we'll have Firebase Firestore instance and Firebase messaging instance. So here we'll say final Firebase, let's go ahead with this messaging first, and then here we'll say messaging, and then here Firebase messaging dot instance. So we'll get the single stone instance of this Firebase messaging object. Then we'll also have Firebase Firestore. Looks like it's not imported automatically. The reason is because we also have to install this plugin. So let's go ahead and do that. Flutter pub add cloud Firestore. Okay, right, now we should be able to import it, and Firestore. Okay, let me go ahead and create this instance of this, and then here I think here we'll have Firebase Firestore dot instance, this one, and as you see that at the top it's imported automatically. So I'm gonna restart the app one more time because we just installed a plugin. Okay, looks like we don't have any issue. Okay, right. And after that here we're gonna create a function, and we'll call it get device token, and then here we will get it from messaging dot get device. Well, here actually we just get token. Let's go ahead with this, and then we're gonna save it. We don't have to save, we can actually return. And then here, before we return, I think we have to do a wait, because it would be asynchronous operation. And then here we do future string, like that. Now why we are doing all these things? Because as we submit our information, like the one that we click, this one, you also want to submit this device token to the Firebase. So that's an unique. In general, actually you'd submit user ID, but since we didn't implement a login feature, so we don't have user ID for now, we can use get token as the unique ID, but there could be other solutions. Remember, this is a temporary solution. In real life, in general, you would get user ID to save in the database, but in that case you have to do authentication and a lot of other stuffs. Since this tutorial is mostly for Getx, so we are not going to touch those things, so we are going to use this one. Okay, so we have to call this get the device token. With this, we're going to save in the database together, so each device will have like each of this will have unique user ID. So this is more like we are going to treat as user ID. Hopefully it makes sense. Once again, in real life you would use user ID to store in the database, not this one. All right, and then over here we'll also have a method. It would be future void, and we're gonna call it save fav. So whenever you click on this, you have to save it, bool fav. Okay, we just say value. All right, so whenever we click on this, this method would get called, and then we'll save the information in the database. Okay, all right, so here we'll have try catch close, and then let's wrap it around like this, otherwise we might get error. Now within it, here we'll say string token, and then here we'll say await get device token, this the one that we created at the top. Now let's go ahead and do this async operation, and then here we'll say if token is not null, which means we can retrieve the user information device token, then this is the time that we go ahead and submit our data to Firestore. So here we have to do await firestore.collection, and we can call it favorites, and then here doc, and then whatever the token that we have, we'll save that one and set like this. So it's a map that we need to send. So here we'll have fav, the value that we are going to pass from. So here we'll have val, and then updated at, here updated at, here we'll say filled value dot server stamp time, this one. So this two information we are going to go ahead and save, and then here we'll say token, and then here we'll say whatever the token is given, and at the same time we can say project ID. Here we'll say project ID. Now we don't have this one for now. Let's say we're gonna pass it. So here we'll say string project ID. Okay, and project ID, why do we have undefined name? Okay, so these are the few information that we are going to pass, and then here we'll say print error saving fav. All right, and then over here we are going to say, for example, throw exception, error saving fav. With this, we'd be pretty much ready to save this information in our database. But now let me tell you how this is going to work. So from somewhere we'll call this fav. As we call, we'll pass the value and project ID. The project ID should be the ID of this thing. Okay, that's all. Because we have different, UI. Each of them, they have an ID. All right, so we'll first try to get the token if we can. Then we'll send this information, fab value, whatever it is there, and then we'll also update the collection favorites, and then here we'll have token is this one, because we'll use this token to retrieve data later on. And then here we'll also have project ID, which is coming for this one. So this is the basic one. Now since this is done, we need to go ahead and create a service class. So I think I might have an issue here. Actually, this shouldn't have been service. This should be actually repository. Let me rename that repositories. Let's call it repositories. Okay, right. Okay, now it makes sense. So this is our repository actually, and then here we're gonna create another directory and we're gonna call it services, and then here within it we'll have, we can call it fav service .dart. Okay, now the service should stay between controller and repositories. This way the code is pretty clean. Otherwise, if you put everything in the controller would be bloated, which means that it will have a lot of code in it, so which is not good. So let's separate them. So here we'll call fab repository, we already have it, and fab repository, and then we call the class fab repository. Okay, right. And after that, over here we're gonna create a method which would be future void type, and then you can call it update fav bool val and string project ID. This is what we'll have for now. Later on we can make it as a model, so we can just pass the object ID and object, and then we get them directly. We'll do that. So here we'll have await and a repository, fab repository. Looks like I need to add async, like fab repository dot here we'll have, let's see what's the method name, save fav. So here we'll have save fav. So now fav service class would call this method, okay, so that in our case the controller doesn't have to deal with so many extra stuff. So every time if you have controller, try to separate the code between repository and fav services, okay, or service. Actually, it doesn't have to be fav service. Now we can go to our controller. Let me close this digital page. We also don't need that. We don't need this. We also don't need this one. Now let's move over here. So since we are doing this, so we need to change this one, okay, because as we set the value, we have to call this class update fav, and then it'll eventually call the save fav, which is over here. Okay, right. So we need to change this method a little bit, not exactly all of it. So I'm gonna take this one, and then here, just like this, whatever I had early, keep it as it is. Now we also need to create an instance of our service class, the one that we have. So here we'll have fav service, and fav service call fav service. All right. Now since we have the instance here, we'll say fav service dot update fav value. Okay, so in that case we also need to pass string project ID. All right, so yeah, like that. Now since we are doing with two values, of course we cannot do set here, so we'll have to say void, because set only allows to set one value. Okay, and here we'll call it set fav. Okay, you are good to go. There would go away. And then in your my little page, of course there is an error over here, so here we can say fav controller dot set value. Okay, now here's the project ID, and what is the project ID in this case? Actually this index ID. Okay, whatever the index was there, we just take that one. And what is the index? Let's see. Let's go at the top. I think this one. So this is the index that we want to pass. Okay, so we are already passing that one. So if you pass the index, and you are good to go. All right, and this is several. We do have another issue. What is this? String project ID. Okay, yeah, right. So this is the Boolean problem. Now we don't have anything called fav, so whatever was there, we take this one. Actually, we want to pass this. And index, we need to convert it to string. Actually, you're good to go now. So we negate it, and we pass to this. Whenever we are here, we save the value, and then we also save it to the server. You get there. All right, okay, right. Now over here, so let's go ahead and check that whether it works or not. Now as you try to set up Firebase in our application, you may encounter this issue. Here at the top you'll see that it says that Firebase options from resources, and then it's also talking about values XML correctly and things like that. So it's pretty much values XML correctly and Firebase options. Now a lot of you might go ahead and fix this over here, create a value file, but actually this is not the solution. The reason it's throwing this error is because here you have to put this options. Okay, now let's go ahead and just import it, then you're good to go. And after that, here we're going to stop the application, and then here we are going to run it. So it may take a bit of time, so let's wait for this. Now as you see that the app building is done, the APK is done. Now it's going to be uploaded, and we don't have any issues over here. The earlier issues has been gone, and we are good to go. Now at this moment, if you go ahead and get started here, and then we're gonna open this, and then here let's save it. And well, looks like something has happened, and we don't know, and we do see there are a few errors. So but before we check the error, we can check our Firebase. Now I'm going to go ahead and restore it, or refresh actually, not restore. Let's see whether we have data or not. Yes, we already have some data. As you see that the collection is favorite, document ID, and then here project ID, and this and that. Okay, all right, so that means it's working. Now if you go ahead and try another one, not on iOS, let's do it on Android. So if you try it here, say this one, and then let's save it. Okay, or save it like this, and then you refresh it again. So here we do see that it has updated the same project, same document, but with the project ID too, and we do have this one. So the first thing is that yes, it's submitting information, but it is also actually not checking whether for it's a duplication or not, or it should be a new one or not. Okay, so you also have to work on that. Well, now this one has got problems. Of course, the problem is with the code itself, so we're gonna fix the code first. Now the way we wrote the query, so it has to be more updated, not this one. So how to update it? So to update it, it would become a little bit more complicated, not exactly like this. So far here this is good. And after that, actually we want to first take all the collections, and then we're gonna check whether the same token and project ID they're already in the database or not. If they are in the database, we're gonna update them based on this toggle value, and if they're not in the database, we're gonna create a new record. That's how it's gonna work. So here we're gonna say collection reference, and here we're gonna say fav collection, this one, and over here we'll have our Firestore object, and then here we'll say collection, and then here we'll have our collections name. So what we are doing with this, we are getting all the collections from our database. Okay, and after that, over here we are going to check on them. So how do we check? Here we're gonna say await, and then we're gonna take this object, and here we're gonna do where, and then here we're gonna write condition. The first one is token, which is device token, and then here we'll say is equal to token, the token that we get, this one. Now this token is in the database field, the one that's coming from here, and this token is this one. And after that we'll also have another where, and here we're gonna check, say project ID. Okay, right, and with that is also is equal to project ID. So we're gonna add this too, and then you're gonna say get. So if there is a match, get them. If there is a match, so this is the collection, if there is a match, and get them. But if there is a match, you need to save it. So here we're gonna say query snapshot, here we're gonna say query snapshot, this one. So all we did, we get all the collections, and then we did a kind of conditional check and return some data. Now over here we'll check if query snapshot is query snapshot will have docs, and then here we'll say is not empty, so we get all the documents. So here we'll get all the documents here, remember, so this is a document, so we'll get all the documents. Okay, all right. So if it's not empty, that means that with this same condition, which means there is already an ID, project ID, there is already a token that's been added in the database. Okay, so we're gonna get that one. So over here we're just simply going to update the value. So here we'll say await query snapshot docs, and then we're gonna get to the first one, the one that matches, and then here we're gonna get the reference, and then here on this we're gonna call this update this function, and then this is given as map, so that's why we'll have brackets in it, and here we'll have fav, then whatever the value we pass, and then here you can have updated at, and then fill value dot server timestamp. Now let's go ahead. Yeah, so the idea is we are getting all the connections, and we are seeing if there is a match, and then we check if it is empty or not. If it is not empty, that means there is a match, and then we update the fav. This fav is whatever the value you toggle, that one. Okay, all right, so we do this one. Now I'm going to have to cut this one. So the first one, this if there is so this one, so now this one over here, if it is not empty. Otherwise we're going to add. So this is going to completely add a new one in the database, and this is just going to update it. Okay, so this is beautiful. Now we're gonna restart this application and let's see. Okay, right, now here we are. Okay, now interesting thing about Firebase is that actually you can observe the changes. As you make changes on any of them, you can observe it from right away there. Okay, so let's click on this, and as you see that, so there is an update, and previously it was 1 and then it changed it. Now let's check on this one more time. Okay, so now fab value is false. Now if I click on this, fab value is true, and the time we also see. Okay, right, now if we get second one, which is John Smith, so this is a different project ID. All right, and so now let's click on this. Now here this default this value is true because this is the local one. We also have to work on this because when we are working with him it became true, but for John Smith it should be false. But anyway, we'll fix that later. Let's click on this. So it looks like we still have a problem because it's updating this project ID itself, but actually we are not supposed to update the project ID. Now let's go ahead and check on this. So the few things that we need to check over here is the token itself. So let's print over here and say print my token is token, the one that we already have, and then here print my project ID is project ID. So these are the given values, right? And the value that we pass from here, these are not from this documents itself. Okay, you're right. So now let's click on this. So this one, the project value, the token is of course the device token, and the project ID is wherever we clicked it, right? Let's click on this. So here this is correct, my project ID and the token and project ID. So the token, the last one is 42TOY and 42TOY project ID. So that part is being correct. We don't have any issues. Okay, right, now let's open on this guy and let's check on him. So here project ID is 0, which is expected, device ID. Now here anyway, so they're returning the correct value. The problem is actually over here, because as you see that we are setting it, it shouldn't be set, it should be actually add. So let's go ahead and change it to add. All right, and now let's I would say restore our app. So if we check on our database, this value project ID is this one, referring this project ID. Now we're gonna check on this. Let's click on this. So as you see that this time a second one has been created and the value is true. But if I click on this again, so the second one has been changed, but the first one doesn't have any change at all. So this time this work is correct. This time whenever we are saving data in the database in our file storage, this is cool and everything is fine. But now the problem is the front end is still not as expected, because this guy, the first one, It is false. Okay, we understand. So if it is false, this is this kind of yellowish color, and then this is also the same. They're false, they're both same. But what if I change to this one? All right, now let's go over there. So it also changes, and then this one too. So now we need to work on the front end. So wherever we click, only that guy should change, not the other one. Okay, so currently the issue we are facing is that as we save it on the database, and then when we go back to other screens and come back, it's not persisted. Okay, so it influenced the other places as well. Okay, now since we are able to save it in the database, we should be able to do it in the front page as well, or on the home screen, or it's not home screen, actually on the screen. Now to be able to do that, first we need to, for example, every time we say visit a certain project, say for example this is a project or this is a project, we need to go ahead and retrieve this information from this Firebase or from our backend and check the value. What value? Check this value. If it is already set there as a favorite true, we'll set it here as well true. If it is false, then of course we don't have to do anything. Okay, so the idea is we're gonna click any of the person or project, then we'll rate this, and then we'll check the value, and then we'll set it. This way, every time we open, we'll see only that UI has changed, okay, over here, not the others. All right, so let's go ahead. So in that case, over here, this is a repository, so we need to make changes. Not changes, actually, we need to add a new method over here. So, and we're gonna call it getFav, okay? getFav. Get a favorite one, and we will just pass, well, in this case, we don't need to pass the fav value. We can just pass the string and we'll get the token from device. So that's what it will do. And then this part stays the same. So we'll get all the collection anyway. So the collection that matches, we are getting all the collections here. And then we are also checking with the match. And then over here, well, we don't need so much of them. Let's remove this one over here. So if it is not empty, then we look for the first one. We are not going to update it. We are just looking for the first one. So here, and then the first one will have val, which is the value, okay? So this is what we are going to actually return from here. So we're going to do return. So we are going to return a boolean, okay? We could return a boolean, or we may return null, okay? So here, instead of writing it like this, we'll say bool. So the idea is we're gonna pass this, we're gonna call this getFav, we're gonna pass the project ID, and then we'll get the device token so that we can prove that we are unique, or we'll also get, in real life, you'll get user ID, okay, or user token actually. Then you get all the collection, and then over here you look for a match, okay? So if there is a match, then, well, that means it is not empty. It is not empty. We pass the first one, okay, and the fab value. So that's what happens. But do remember, these things could also be more optimized, which we'll see in future, that we're going to optimize them more because there's a better way of doing that thing. All right. So now this is the repository, and since the repository is done, we need to go to our service class. So over here, we're gonna call this. So what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and copy this over here. And then here we'll also have bool. And then we're gonna call it getFav. And in this case, we are going to return bool. but the method we are calling is getFav. So this is all well structured. Just copy paste the first service, and then pretty much they're all same. But do make sure that you have this return statement, otherwise you will get error. Okay, all right. Okay, so getting this done, and now you need to come to your controller. In the controller is the one that we get the value from our service, and then we update our UI. Okay, so here we're gonna call it like this: future void get fav, and within it we'll have, say, string project ID. All right, like this. And this would be an async operation. Why? Because we're going to load the data from the server, so this is an async operation. And at the top we have to create a new RxBool variable, which is called isLoading. And then over here we're gonna say true.obs. So when we call this first time, it is loading. Let's see what's going on. Okay, we don't need this. And then we'll have a getter bool get is loading is loading dot value, and then you can also have setter. So here is loading. In general, we might not use this, but let's create it in future. If we use it, you can just directly call it is loading dot value equal val, whatever we pass. Okay, all right. So now over here, so let's go ahead and check the bool, and then here it will say fav status. We get the fav status, and here we'll have await fav service dot get fav, and then we just pass the project ID. And over here we're gonna get our fav value, which is earlier the one that we had, fav dot value, and we're gonna set fav status, and if it is not, if there is no value, just set it to false. And then here is loading dot value equal false. Okay, right. And well, status, I think we have a typo. Status, right. So the idea is we're gonna look at from the UI. So from the UI, as soon as we say, for example, click on this, then we call this guy and we pass the project ID, and then it calls this fav guy as in the service, and then from the service we call the repository, and repository gets the data, either it's a fav value or it returns null. Okay, one of these two. So that's how it works. Now since this is done over here, we need to come to our my detail page, and over here all we need to do, grab the project ID, and we already have the project ID, and we also have this fav controller. We have an instance of it, so here we can just say fav controller get fav, and then we pass the project ID, which is our ID in this case. This ID is the project ID. Okay, so it's gonna make the call. All right, and then over here we can also do obx variable, obx widget, and then here we'll say fav controller dot is loading. If it is loading true, then we show this widget, so which would be circular progress indicator. Okay, otherwise we show our scaffold. Okay, so let me reformat the code. All right, so that's how it looks like right now after reformatting. So obx will make changes on the UI. Okay, So based on this triggering value is loading true or false, we're going to show either this or that. Okay, so now let's go ahead and restart our application. Let's get over here. We are loading, and let's click on this. Okay, it looks like it's loaded, and it's the value which is this one. All right, and then now look at this. So you see the value changed. Maybe it took a little bit of time to change. So this is most probably the correct one. And then, okay, this is it. Now we're gonna change this Yusuf. Let's change this value. We go back and we check this guy. Okay, so his value is, because it was already in the server as it was given, but John Smith we didn't change. So John Smith says as false, and this is same for Moses. All right, now let's go ahead and click on this guy again, and then we change the value, and then we check John Smith. Okay, that is correct because we didn't do anything with John Smith. And then this value, so that means that our information is already saved in the database. We retrieve them correctly, and based on the retrieve value we also make changes in the UI. So that's all about state management. Okay, you manage the state. So in this case the state is being managed. Actually the fab value is over here, and you see that whatever there was this original value for fab, we just go ahead and change it. Okay, so that's what is happening over here. All right, and then there's another thing that we can change right away for set fab. So let's go ahead and see the set fab. Now I do believe that set fab is also being called most probably somewhere from, okay, we need to check where is this set fab getting called. Now to check that, I'm just going to do a search set fab. So in one place it is my detail page. Okay, my detail page is calling this controller set fab, this one. Now why I'm saying this one, now even for set fab we can check this is loading value. So if you do come over here, my controller, we could do this is loading false. Okay, and we could do at the beginning, we make sure that is loading is true. Okay, whenever this gets called, this one gets called, we update it, and once we return we change the state to false. Now if it is so, then over here we also need to make changes of our UI. So if you come back at the top, okay, we already have it over here, so we don't need to worry about it because we already have it. Is true, we show it, otherwise we actually show the other widget. So now let's go ahead and check on this. All right, okay, it works, the loading. But now with the loading, you see it shows you a black background, so we don't want to show a black background. So over here I'm going to go ahead and create a new file, or not new file, a new folder, and I'm going to call it widgets. So within it here I'm going to use all the reusable widgets. Okay, so here I'm going to say loading widget.dart, and then within it I'm going to go ahead and create a stateless class, and we're going to call it loading widget. And then over here let's import the necessary packages. We're good to go. And then over here we're going to return say scaffold most probably we need to import material library. Okay, right. So here we'll have body, and then here we'll have, say, center, and then child widget, then circular progress indicator. All right, that one. And you can also assign color to it, say background color. Here you could do colors.red. Okay, so we'll see indicator behind there is a red background. All right, and then here you can also use abber. So here we'll use abber. Now for this one, we can copy some of this let's see, content page idea where we had this abber, this background color. So we're gonna just copy this and put it here. All right, it looks like we can't use a const in this case. All right, so that's our loading widget. Now over here, instead of calling it like this, we can just simply call loading widget. This one. Okay, it looks much cleaner and beautiful. And then let's see which other places that we can change. We also have, okay, over here we can change it to loading widget. Okay, we are good to go. So let's restore our app. Okay, right, now let's get over here. So now it looks good, much better. And then here is the same thing. As you can see, it looks very beautiful. And then you do whatever you want to do. So that's also the basic state management with this Getx tutorial.